released in memory of 41-year-old Tomeka Kamwani. Family members say she was shot to death in an act of domestic violence. Her sister, Lakeisha Brooks, says tonight's turnout is overwhelming and comforting.
I know my sister was a good person, but I just never thought all of this.
She says Tomeka worked as a nurse at different places, including Autumn Lake Memorial Bridge Nursing Home.
Her patients would call her even after the fact, after they left the facility.
Tomeka has 4 children. They're pictured alongside her in this GoFundMe set up to help with her burial and their care.
2 of her oldest kids were in the house, and neither one of them want to go back in the house now.
She did everything right. She ended the relationship. She called the police when he hit her. She went to court and got a restraining order. She changed her locks. She followed every step that every safety resource, every domestic violence hotline, every well-meaning friend tells a woman in danger to do. And on the night of March 27, 2026, her ex-fiancé broke into her home in Swedesboro, New Jersey anyway. He walked past those locks, past that restraining order, past every legal barrier that was supposed to keep him out. And he shot and killed 41-year-old Tomeka Kamwani, a nurse, a mother of 4, inside the home she was trying to feel safe in. 2 of her children were in that house when it happened. Here's what's going to stay with you through this entire video. There was a moment, months before that night, when a judge had the power to change this outcome. A documented moment with a documented record where a clear decision was made. And I'm not going to tell you what that decision was yet. But when we get there, I need you to remember that Tomeka was still alive at that point. She had time. And the system wasted it. Real quick, hit that subscribe button and drop a like before we go further. If this story makes you feel something, and it will, share it. Tomeka's family is still in the middle of their grief right now, and her 4 kids need the world to know her name. That starts with us. All right, let me take you back to where this all started. Tomeka Kamwani was 41 years old. She lived on Broad Street in Swedesboro, New Jersey, a small, tight-knit community in Gloucester County, the kind of place where people know their neighbors and tragedy feels personal to everyone on the block. She was a nurse. Think about what that means for a second. Every single day, Tomeka went to work and took care of people in their worst moments. She was trained to stay calm under pressure, to prioritize someone else's safety over her own discomfort, to show up even when it was hard. That was who she was professionally. And it was who she was at home, too. Her 4 children were named Gavin, Aiden, Bryson, and Ava. Her sister Lakeisha Brooks later wrote about her publicly, and the words she used were simple and devastating. Tomeka was the kind of mother who poured everything into her children. They were her joy, her purpose, and the reason she showed up every single day with strength and love. Anyone who knew her knew how deeply she adored them. She was also the kind of person who kept things to herself, not out of weakness, out of the way people do when they're managing something painful, and they don't want to burden the people they love. Her family would later say they wished she had felt comfortable telling them more, that they were right there, that they would have helped. But that's the thing about domestic violence that doesn't make it into the simple explanations. It doesn't always look like what people expect. Sometimes it lives quietly inside a relationship that looks, from every angle anyone can see, like it might work out, until it doesn't. At some point, Tomeka had become engaged to a man who the family says had been around, at family functions, at gatherings, someone they had accepted as part of the picture. Her aunt Barbara Brooks Faults said it plainly. We thought he was a good person. But behind that picture, Tomeka had been experiencing domestic violence multiple times. She had managed it quietly, the way too many people do, hoping it would get better or stay manageable, hoping she could handle it herself. Then, in February of 2026, it escalated. Her ex-fiancé punched her in the face. She reported it. He was arrested and charged with domestic violence. And here is the first place the system had a real opportunity to intervene, with a documented assault, a documented victim, and a documented history. He was released on bond after just a few days. Now, hold that. Because I told you at the beginning that there was a moment where a judge made a decision that still had time to change what came next. That moment was right here, and it gets worse. When he got out on bond, he contacted Tomeka, and what he said to her was not a man who had learned anything from being arrested. He told her, and this is the part of this story I want you to really sit with. He told her she needed to put more locks on her door. Then he showed her the card he would use to break in anyway. Let me be clear about what that is. That is not a threat wrapped in ambiguity. That is a man who has just been released from custody for assaulting a woman, who walks up to that same woman and describes, step by step, how he is going to violate whatever protection she puts between herself and him. That is a direct statement of intent. Tomeka took it seriously. She went and got a restraining order. She did what she was supposed to do. She put locks on that door, just like he told her to, because she was trying to survive a situation that was getting more dangerous by the day. But here's what investigators knew that makes this even harder to sit with. This was not his first time, not even close. The man who punched Tomeka in the face in February 2026, who was then released on bond, who then threatened to break into her home, he had been here before. He had a prior domestic violence conviction from 2009. A separate case, a separate victim years earlier. That history was in the record. The judge had access to it, and the judge still let him out. Here is what Tomeka Kamwani did after he made that threat. She got the restraining order. She secured her home. She stayed in contact with the people who were supposed to be protecting her. She did not disappear or give up or convince herself it would be fine. She was a nurse. She understood risk. She understood what it meant when a situation was escalating. And she responded to it the way a rational, careful person responds to a threat, by taking every legal step available to her. Her sister later said she immediately filed for the restraining order. She got the restraining order, and she still wasn't protected. That sentence deserves to hang in the air for a second. She did the right thing. She followed the process. She trusted that the tools available to her would work. And the tools failed. Because a restraining order is a piece of paper. It tells a violent person what they are legally prohibited from doing. It does not physically stop them. It creates consequences after the violation, not before. And for someone who had already decided that Tomeka's safety meant less than his control over her, consequences after the fact were not a deterrent. They were never going to be a deterrent. The system needed to make sure he wasn't free to violate anything in the first place. It didn't. At 3:52 in the morning on March 28, 2026, the early hours after the night of March 27th, Woolwich Township Police posted on their Facebook page that officers were conducting an investigation on the 300 block of Broad Street in Swedesboro. They noted there was no active threat to the public. What that quiet, procedural language was covering was this: Tomeka Kamwani was dead inside her home. Her ex-fiancé had broken in, past the locks, past the restraining order, past everything, and shot her. Then he turned the gun on himself. 2 of her children were in that house when their mother was killed. They were physically unharmed. But there is no version of witnessing something like that from which a child walks away unchanged. Her sister later said that neither of the 2 children who were inside wanted to go back into that house. And who could blame them? The Gloucester County Prosecutor's Office took charge of the investigation. Police confirmed there were no additional suspects and no ongoing threat to the public. The man who killed Tomeka was dead. The case, in the narrowest legal sense, was closed before it ever opened. But the story, the part that matters to the people Tomeka left behind, that part is far from over. In the days after Tomeka's death, The community of Swedesboro did what small communities do when something unthinkable happens. They showed up. A vigil was held. Family members said the turnout was overwhelming. People came not just to grieve, but to say something, to put words to the anger and the loss and the frustration of watching a woman who did everything right still end up here. At the vigil, one woman told the crowd something I want to repeat here because I think it is exactly right. If they want to track your every step, that is not love. If they want to know who all your friends are, that is not love. That is called control. Tomeka's family used their grief to say something louder than grief. They called for better legislation around domestic violence. They asked people to learn the warning signs. They said they hoped Tomeka's story would help someone else recognize what was happening to them before it was too late. Her Aunt Barbara said something that stopped me. It's a shame he had to do that. That's about all I can think about. Why would he want to do that? People break up. People break up. That is the thing. Relationships end. That is a normal part of life. But there's a specific kind of person for whom someone else's decision to leave becomes something they cannot tolerate, something they treat as a threat to their own existence. And that specific kind of person, especially one with a documented record of doing this before, cannot be left to manage himself on a bond. Tomeka's family is not wrong to be angry. The question of how much accountability a judge bears for releasing a repeat offender who then kills someone is not a simple one legally. But morally, in terms of what happened and what could have been different, the answer is uncomfortable and clear. She needed more time. She had done everything right. She just needed the system to hold him long enough for that to matter. It didn't. If you've been with this video from the start, you already know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this one. Her name needs to travel. Tomeka Kamwani. Say it, share it, make sure it's not forgotten. And trust me, the next story on this channel is going to hit just as hard. You don't want to miss it. I'll see you on the next one.